Hey, welcome back, everybody. Matt and Cheryl's Gen Excellent Playlist 1980. I'm Matt.
I'm Sheryl.
We're getting back in our fall groove here after a bit of a summer sabbatical. Sheryl and I got a little hectic there at the end of summer, beginning of fall. Hopefully, we'll be recording regularly now, and we're getting into the 80s, which is certainly going to be more exciting for a lot of our peers who are tuning in because that's when their ears started pricking up and music started becoming more a part of their lives. I've got this list here, the top selling songs from 1980. And Sheryl, I got to tell you, I like most of them. I really do. I like most of these songs. Not all of them did I like at the time.
Yeah.
The top two, I was pretty lukewarm. Call Me by Blondie. It was one of my first favorite bands, but Call Me was never one of my favorite Blondie songs. Nothing wrong with it, but it's a decent song, but it doesn't hold a candle to the best stuff on Parallel Lines for me, although it was a massive hit. It wasn't on an album. It was on a movie soundtrack, the American Gigolo soundtracks. I got all the way down to number 21 before I really had to hold my nose. And it was a song called With You I'm Born Again by Billy Preston and Sarita, which I absolutely despised at the time. And I don't care for much now.
I don't even know that.
Yeah, you're probably better off not knowing. There is at least one song in the top 10 here that I will be adding to the playlist. Michael Jackson, Rock With You, classic, classic, classic. Captain and Tennille, Do That To Me One More Time. Not many songs sexier than that have made the top 10 for a
That's
year.
true.
Yeah. Crazy Little Thing Called Love. Beautiful rockabilly pastiche by Queen off the Game album. Coming up, you've already selected Paul McCartney, Funky Town, my global hit for 1980 by Lip Sync. It's Still Rock and Roll to Me, Billy Joel off the Glass House's huge record that year for him.
I really like that album.
I'm still considering one of the singles off that for 1980 as well. And then here's an interesting one for me. So I was in our only record store out here on the west side. I live in Hillsboro, Oregon, west side suburb of Portland. And I was in there a while back and they were playing this album. This is interesting. I don't recognize this. And it was the soundtrack to The Rose, Bette Midler, The Rose. I'd never listened to the record before. Obviously, I remember the song and I liked the song at the time. I remember playing it on the piano, I had the sheet music. The album is interesting. Bette Midler may not be your cup of tea musically, but her vocal talent is unquestioned.
Yeah.
And had she pursued a harder rocking style, she could have pulled it off easily.
Yeah. I listened to that album a while ago and I remember really liking it. Surprisingly, I've always liked that song as well, but I hadn't never really listened to anything of hers or had any expectations, and I had not seen the movie. But yeah, I think it's a good album. Actually, she's going to come up a little bit on my album pick.
Oh, interesting. Let's talk about what we're adding to the playlist this week. So 1980, we got 16 songs to add for the year 1980. We started at 1972 with one song, two for 73, and then adding by twos as we go through the years. We'll peak in the mid-80s and then taper down to the late 90s when we finish this off. So my song is not the first of its kind, but maybe the first time this style of music was really perfected. We're talking about power ballads here, and the song is Keep On Loving You by REO Speedwagon, which could go on our 1981 list. It sold a lot more in 81 than 1980. But the album it came from, High Infidelity, was released Thanksgiving week of 1980, and the single came out the same week, so it qualifies for a 1980 playlist. And the album, High Infidelity, which would spawn 6 singles, 4 of which made the top 40.
Yeah.
And there's another song on there that should have been one of the biggest hits. We'll talk about that. It was the biggest selling album of 1981. Massive hit record for REO Speedwagon, a band that had been around for years and years, and then boom, hits it big well into their career. Sheryl this week is going to pick her album of the year, one that I correctly predicted.
Kind of a no-brainer for me.
Yeah, well, yeah. Pete Townshend's Empty Glass, which for all intents and purposes is his first true solo album. Now, he put out a couple of records before.
Yeah.
I've never listened to either of those.
You haven't listened to Who Came First or Rough Mix?
No, I've never listened to either of those.
Really?
No.
You're missing out.
But do you consider Empty Glass to be his first solo album, or do you call Who Came First his first?
I think Who Came First is, but it did have songs that he had already written and recorded with The Who on it. So I would say the Empty Glass would be considered his first full-fledged solo album. Rough Mix is Pete Townsend and Ronnie Lane. So
So
it's not really a
not a
solo
solo
album,
album.
although he's the main songwriter. I can't believe you've never listened to that album because that has some of my favorite Pete Townsend songs ever, like Who or
Really?
solo. Yeah.
Okay. I've got just about everything by The Who. I have had pretty much their entire catalog for years. I had Empty Glass early on, and I guess I just wasn't ready for the record as a 19, 20-year-old.
It's not made for a 19 or 20-year-old.
No, no. It is an older man's record, and I definitely appreciate it more now. And it is back in my collection now. But I had it in college and then traded it in.
I should clarify that. It's not an album for a 19 or 20-year-old guy. But I was 19 when I got really into it.
Yeah.
But I think that actually women connect with it more than men do.
That was a first for Pete, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
So we've made fun of Sheryl in the past for her Who fandom because this is one of the ultimate lads bands. I mean, their audience was almost exclusively male. And Pete Townsend, who is about as interesting and engaging an interview subject as anybody in the history of music.
Oh, yeah. I could listen to him all day long. Yep.
He's a fascinating character for me. I mean, he's a real intelligent, thoughtful guy, but he's got this burning intensity, which is somewhat intimidating. I'd be kind of intimidated to be in the same room as him. I mean, he seems like he's so intelligent and thoughtful, but then he just seems like at any moment he could just explode into a rage of some kind. It's just,
he doesn't seem like that to me at all.
I
There's
don't
so
know.
many interviews I've seen with him where people ask really stupid questions and he always answers thoughtfully.
Very giving
Yes.
interview.
And we talked about Paul McCartney as an interviewee and how he comes across like he's laid back, but he's actually really guarded.
Yeah, doesn't say much.
Pete is the polar opposite of that. He is an open book. He's always honest. And I don't see him at all as someone who has a temper that I would feel intimidated by.
That is a part of his personality, though. A notoriously combustible group of guys.
Yeah, on stage. And he'll even say that he is a completely different person on stage. He's in a whole other world.
So his offstage personality is pretty mild-mannered.
I think so.
I got free tickets to see The Who when they were in town last. I couldn't find anybody to go with me. Didn't end up going. My wife bailed at the last minute because she got sick. And it never occurred to me until that moment how far The Who have fallen from the classic rock pantheon. Because you go back to their heyday in the 70s, they were on the same level as bands like Led Zeppelin, the Rolling Stones. They were at the top of that pedestal. And for whatever reason, over the years, they've slipped way down. They just haven't carried across the generations like these other bands have.
It's surprising to me how popular The Who actually were. If you pull out specific songs like Baba O'Reilly, which I think is still pretty popular, like Won't Get Fooled Again, Who Are You? Those are about the only songs I can think of that have really carried over that people, like young people, probably still know because they have that anthemic, huge sound and power behind them. But that really comes from their stage presence and from Roger and not really from the writing necessarily. So if you take their albums and you take the rest of their music as a whole, it's not surprising to me that it hasn't carried over. And it's actually kind of surprising to me that it was as popular as it was.
That's an interesting take. They were an incredible live band. I mean, one of the greatest ever.
Their live show is what made them what they were.
At one time, they were considered the loudest band in the world. I think it was between them and Deep Purple for
and John Entwistle had a lot to do with that.
What was his role in terms of the volume?
Oh, just because he was so loud. I mean, he wanted everything to be up to 15. Like everything was always louder. And if you've ever seen John Entwistle solo show, that is the loudest concert I've ever been to, and it actually felt unhealthy. Like I could feel my organs moving inside me, like thumping to the bass.
Well, let's get to Empty Glass. This comes out in 1980. The last Who album was Who Are You? And then obviously the death of Keith Moon. You had the tragedy in Cincinnati Riverfront Stadium with 11 fans getting trampled, trying to get into a Who show. So there have been some traumatic things that had happened in Pete Townshend's life leading up to his first solo album. Now, I certainly remember as a kid hearing Let My Love Open the Door on the radio, which I loved at the time and still do. And it's a song I would consider putting on the playlist as a single for 1980.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have contemporary memory of hearing that song on the radio or no?
No, I don't really actually.
I knew of The Who. I was certainly aware of the band. I remember the news story when the tragedy happened in Cincinnati. That was big news when that happened. I don't know if I would have been aware of Keith Moon's death when it happened in 78. Hard to say. Doubtful. But that song would be the first time that any new material that I was aware of being played on the radio by a member of The Who. And then shortly after that, the Face Dances record the following year. You Better, You Bet.
Yeah.
I remember those songs coming out pretty close to one another in the timeline. And this leads to a big debate because, Face Dances, I haven't listened to that album very much. I've had it for a long time, probably only listened to it a couple of times when I got it. But a lot of people are of the mindset that maybe Pete was kind of hoarding some good material that he probably should have shared with the band. What's your take on that?
I completely disagree with that. Honestly, I think Who Are You and Face Dances both could have been Pete solo albums. The songs on Empty Glass are so personal. And this is one of the reasons why I love this album so much too, because this is a man bearing his soul. And at this time in Pete's life, he was an alcoholic. He was a drug addict. He was still mourning the death of Keith Moon. He didn't really know what was happening with The Who. They were kind of directionless at this time. They reformed with Kenny Jones, who was the drummer from the Small Faces that they had known for years and had worked really closely with. And, Kenny gets a really bad rap because he stepped into a job where, first of all, nobody except, in my opinion, Zach Starkey, who is the drummer for The Who now, who's Ringo Starr's son, no one else could have taken over that job. And if they would have tried to get somebody who was kind of more like Keith, which is tough to do because there's very few drummers or anyone who is.
I wouldn't even know whose name to put forward for that.
I don't either. Maybe like Carl Palmer or somebody had the huge setup. And I think that if they did that, they probably would have been criticized even more because then it would have been like, oh, well, he's just trying to sound like Keith or he's trying to be, So instead, they went the polar opposite direction with the real timekeeper.
He's a good drummer.
And the only reason why people say anything about it is because he's just not like Keith.
This is one of the things that I think Pete needed here. And I think he was craving working with a more restrained drummer, a more groove-oriented drummer.
Yeah, I agree. Also, you have to keep in mind, Who Are You, which was Keith Moon's last album. He died like a couple months after it came out. Keith is gone at that point. He's so far below his level that he was at in any previous albums. There was a 3-year gap between Who by Numbers, which came out in 75, and Who Are You? And in that time, Keith had really deteriorated. And the drumming on Who Are You is just like, in fact, there's one song on there, Music Must Change, where he's not even on it because he couldn't play in 6/8 time. So it's really one of the reasons why I think that's their worst album.
I was surprised to hear you say that. I know I've listened to Who Are You quite a bit more than Face Dances or It's Hard.
I actually think it has really good songs on it. And that's why I think it would have been better as a Pete solo album because he could have put together a band that could have actually handled those songs.
But then you wouldn't have had 905, which I love.
Yeah, I know. That's one of my favorite songs too. But John Entwistle could have put that on his solo album. Yeah. He has 3 songs on Who Are You, which is the most of any Who album. John should have kept those for his solo albums. So actually, I think that Pete was already starting to write in a way that was more personal. Really, every album, starting with Sellout, the music is revolving around a story and a character. Actually, starting with Quick One. The song Quick One is like a little mini opera. And then he does the same thing on Sellout. Then Tommy, it's a theatrical piece. Same with Quadrophenia. Really, Who by Numbers was the first album where Pete was just writing from a more personal place. The Who have a very strange dynamic because the songwriter is not the singer. And so Roger has been the voice of Pete's songs, and his style is so different than Pete's style. And it's really interesting because Pete's one of those artists, always has had his own home studio. So he records demos. They're full-fledged recordings with drums, bass, every instrument. And he also has made his demos really available to the public. He has 3 collections out. A lot of them are songs that they did record with The Who. A lot of them are songs that were never released. And some of it is the solo stuff.
His demo recordings are incredible, too.
They're amazing.
Yeah.
And it's really cool to listen to them, especially the songs that were recorded by The Who. Pete's versions versus The Who versions are like completely different songs. Roger basically is like a thug, like he was a blue collar.
He's a hard nut.
Yep. His whole image, he's got the flowing, at least in the 70s, the flowing locks, and, like he's constantly shirtless with the pecs. And
he was the golden god.
yes, exactly. And then you have Pete, who's the polar opposite, who's this skinny, scrawny, intellectual art student. Pete sings in kind of a higher register, and he has a vulnerability about him.
Yes.
Roger used to sing in a much higher, more kind of airy voice, like on Sellout, and Tommy. When they toured Tommy, he really found his place on stage. And from then on, he became like this golden god, this rock god.
Yeah. The Woodstock performance took them to a different level.
Yep.
Once people saw that, certainly one of the highlights of the movie.
And then, Live at Leeds, they go back to their roots. That's where Roger really starts to get that like raspy, tough, strong voice.
And the band then is really at the peak of its powers on stage. Just so powerful.
Yes. So you have this interesting dichotomy of a songwriter who's writing really heartfelt, vulnerable music. And then you have the performers that are cranking it up to 11, the hardest rockin' sound with this golden god up on the stage, front man. So the visual aspect and the musical aspect you get is just so different than what is really being said in the music. Like you said, once Pete got to the point where he was recording Empty Glass, he handpicked his own band. He's got a couple drummers on this band, but mainly it's Simon Phillips, who's an amazing studio drummer, like incredible. Mark Berzecki is the other drummer. He and Tony Butler, who's the bass player, went on to form Big Country, and they're great. So, he has a really awesome band on this album. One of the things that I read that I didn't know until recently, Pete was actually considering having Todd Rundgren produce Empty Glass.
Yeah.
And he decided against it because he thought that they were too similar. And I was like, oh, wow, that's really interesting. I've never thought about that before. They are really similar. They both are very interested in the recording process. Todd is a producer. Pete hasn't gone that route, but they both really like to experiment, in their own home studios. They were both really into synthesizers, and not just playing synthesizers, but actually learning how to use them and really understand them.
I don't think Pete gets enough credit for his cutting edge use of keyboards in hard rock context.
Yeah,
really.
Exactly. And he was working with people that were creating these synthesizers. He was actually working one-on-one with them because so few people actually knew and understood how to use them. And he did.
He's doing sequence patterns before that was the sequencer technology even existed on the Who's Next album.
Yep. But Todd Rundgren was really interested in that stuff too, and really cutting edge at that time. And I honestly, I think that if Pete didn't have the Who, that Pete would have been an artist like Todd Rundgren. He would have been kind of more on the fringe, somebody who is really well respected and, quite well known, but nothing to the extent of what the Who is. He would have been more of like an artsy, less well known artist like that.
Yeah. And I think Rundgren would be the first to say that the Who and Pete Townshend were one of his biggest influences when he was getting started.
Yeah, definitely.
Certainly with the Nas, that was a major influence. Yeah.
So we're getting up into 1980. Keith is gone. They've now started up the Who again with Kenny Jones. But also at this time, Roger has starred the movie McVicker, and he does the soundtrack for that movie, which is basically a Roger Daltrey solo album, or kind of a Who album, because Pete, John, and Kenny all play on it. Honestly, I would say that album would make more sense as a Who album than Empty Glass would. Because those songs, they rock, and they've got Roger's vocals behind them, so they already sound like a Who album. And they're much more heavy and rockin' than anything that's on Empty Glass. I think the reason that people say that, including Roger, is because Rough Boys. First song on the album. It's the most Who sounding song on that album.
Yeah. Yeah. You want to hear what it would sound like with Roger's vocals.
Yeah, maybe.
I do.
Roger would not sing that song. He wouldn't touch that lyric. There's no way.
Ball. Yeah.
So it just wouldn't happen. That's why I think it's kind of ridiculous that he's the one that's saying that, oh, well, I think Pete was holding out. And he's only saying that too because Let My Love Open the Door was a big hit for Pete. And Rough Boys charted too. I really don't honestly think that Roger would have been comfortable singing Rough Boys.
And that starts the album. And that song is right up there with the great rockers in the Who pantheon.
Yes.
It's right there with them. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's got a modern sound to it. There's a lot of interesting things going on in the track with synthesizers and guitar tone.
Yeah, I think it's got some of the coolest guitar work that Pete's done. The guitar sound, especially. Actually, one of the things that's kind of interesting about this album, too, is that it doesn't sound like it came out in 1980. It doesn't pin itself to that era at all, but it also doesn't really necessarily sound like a Who album. If you were a Who fan in 1980 and you bought this album, you put on the first song and you think, okay, this sounds like the Who, but you're kind of not really sure about the lyrics, though. Because you're hearing Pete say that he wants to bite and kiss these guys, and really what he's talking about is the punks. It's dedicated to the Sex Pistols. That song is dedicated to the Sex Pistols.
Yeah.
The album is dedicated to the Sex Pistols and his kids. It's more about him messing with them. Like, really? Come over here. You want to see? Because we're the ones that started this.
But like the best lyrics, it can be viewed, interpreted different ways and seen on different levels. And Pete has been very cagey over the years about the nature of his sexuality.
There was one interview in particular where he made these comments about how he knows what it's like to live a gay life, and he knows what it's like to be a woman because he is a woman. Later, he kind of was like backtracking and saying, well, I had friends that are gay, and I was, like kind of hanging out in that scene. And
he's done that multiple times where he has made statements that would lead you to believe that he is at least bisexual to a certain extent. But he's done that a few times where he's pushed that out there and then kind of pulled back later on. He's really coy about it.
Yeah, he's experimental. And I think that at this time, especially in the early 80s, he was hanging out with a lot of the new romantic scene, and he was kind of in that whole party scene. He was sort of living vicariously and kind of like dabbling into that culture.
You mentioned the drug addiction too. He was cagey about that too. He was pretty open about alcoholism.
Oh, yeah.
But I think the drug thing was a little more undercover for him. I saw an interview where he was on the Parkinson Show, which is one of the most popular, they call them chat shows in England, talk shows. And, he's always, like I said, he's always very open in interviews, but he said he had nothing to do with narcotics, which is not true. He got addicted to heroin.
Yeah, you hear bits and pieces about it. But I did also read another interview with him saying that he was hanging out with Phil Lynott and woke up with a needle in his arm, and that was the closest he'd ever been to actually ODing. I think that it was about this time, between 80 and 81, I think was the time where he was really at his lowest point.
And there was a lot of heroin going on in England at that time, the music scene in particular.
But really the way that Pete operates, I mean, he did have a time there, and this is what Who Are You is written about, him going out, and making a fool of himself, like in the same vein as like John Lennon and Harry Nilsson and Ringo Starr would do. But really, for the most part, Pete is that guy who's sitting there in his home studio drinking, an entire bottle of brandy by himself while he's writing, recording, and that's really more his MO. I think he just went off the deep end when Keith was really at his lowest point, and that's what pushed him into that whole the Who Are You kind of scene that he was living at the time. But once we're getting up into 1980, basically you look at the cover of the album, which is him in a bar with an empty glass with two women on either side. That was basically where he was in his life. I mean, that was a depiction right there of his life in 1980. But Let My Love Open the Door and the song Empty Glass are actually taken from spiritual writings. He was a follower of Meher Baba, and that's what My Love Opened the Door is actually about. And same with Empty Glass. It's like comes from like a spiritual poem, and it's about filling up your glass when you are at the rock bottom, which is where he was. So, we start with Rough Boys, super rockin' track. Next song, I Am an Animal. Very piano based. And that was a song too that you said, as a 19-year-old boy, you were like,
wasn't ready for that.
Wasn't ready for that.
Well, when you start the album with Rough Boys, you're like, oh yeah, now we're talking. And then that comes on. And it's not so much the chorus, which is beautifully sung, by the way. And again, he's underrated as a
He
vocalist.
is.
He's not blessed with a great voice. It's high and reedy, but he is a technically very strong vocalist. Beautifully sung.
Mm-hmm.
It's a beautiful chorus melody, and this is where so as an older, more wiser music listener now, you hear the real theatrical element in his writing and his music. Now, of course, it should have been obvious. This is the guy who, if he didn't invent, certainly perfected the rock opera. But, I never thought of Tommy or Quadrophenia as like Broadway stage musical production. It was just, I thought of rock opera. It's just an album that's a
That has a
sequence of songs
theme
telling
running all the way
yeah,
through
that's
that
telling
tells a
us,
story.
it's telling a
Mm-hmm.
story. Right.
Mm-hmm.
That's all that meant to me. But when I listen to Empty Glass now, it's like, God, these could be in a Broadway musical. These are very sophisticated melodies with a lot of interesting changes and modulations. And
Mm-hmm.
it's very sophisticated writing. But
Yeah.
it's not so much the core, it's the verse. So you come after Rough Boys, and then I Am an Animal. It's da 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 da. I'm like, what is this? It's no, I like that song a lot. In fact, I like most of side one is superb.
I think I Am an Animal. I mean, really, that's the song that made me open my eyes to the depth of him as a writer and as a musician, too. Because, like you said, it's a very interesting, complicated song.
Beautiful finger pick guitar.
Yeah, and you'd never get that subtlety if that were recorded by The Who. Once again, this is a song that Roger would never sing, the lyric.
Yeah. Who by Numbers was headed down that road.
Yeah. The one benefit that it would have if this were a Who album is that Keith Moon wouldn't be on it. because one of the things that buries a lot of the stuff is the drums, just kind of sometimes take over and distract you.
And you got to think for Pete, obviously it was devastating to lose Keith Moon, but somewhat of a relief because I know there had been frustration in the past that it was limiting for him to try and write for the group and for this guy who can't play a groove to save his life,
Yeah, and that became even more apparent during Who Are You sessions because not only could he not ever do that even when he was at his height, but he had really plummeted down to a point where he was hardly able to do much of anything. So, I think Pete was very musically frustrated.
Yeah, it allowed him to bring more variety to the music he was recording.
And he always chose incredible musicians to play with. He really did.
Yeah.
Usually session guys. Musicians that a lot of other people probably didn't even know who they were at all, but they had already had a long list of credits to their name.
Yeah, sadly, he never did form a touring band to tour this album.
No, because then he went back into the studio with The Who, and then they went out on the road.
Right. Bang, bang. He was a busy, busy man.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, he didn't tour as a solo artist until the Deep End Live.
Yeah, 1985. And which he has with him in that band is David Gilmour, Simon Phillips on drums. So anyway, after I Am an Animal, we go on to And I Moved. Also, very flourishy piano based and
beautiful keyboards. Yeah.
Beautiful keyboards. But this is the song that really confused a lot of people lyrically because it's written from a woman's point of view. And actually, he wrote this song for Bette Midler.
Interesting.
He wrote this song and another one too that's on one of the scoops that he never recorded for an album. But her management turned him down, and so she never recorded it. So he did. I think I could probably imagine her singing it. It's not a rock song. So I'm trying to put myself into the position of an early 20-something guy, Who fan, putting Pete's solo album on for the first time. And it's really not anything like a Who album. Let My Love Open the Door, a song, like you said, that was played on the radio a lot, became a hit for him. Peaked at number 5 on the charts.
Again, very cool keyboards.
Very cool keyboards on that song. And you get that lighter, Pete's vocals are definitely light and bouncy, and this would be a completely different song if Roger were singing it.
It is straight pop, but you got to realize too that there was a very strong pop element in the Who's music, certainly in the 60s.
Oh, yeah.
In fact, the case can be made that they were the original power pop group.
Yeah.
Very influenced by the Beach Boys. This song is straight pop, and it's a beautiful song. It really is.
It really is, but it really would not work as a Who song. It's a
No,
Pete song.
yeah. Pete would definitely sing it on the.
He would definitely
throughout.
sing it. And that's true. I mean, there are songs that Pete sang on Who albums. Most of the time it was because Roger just was like, I'm not going to sing that song. Like However Much I Booze from Who by Numbers. He just flat out refused to sing it because it is completely like Pete reading his diary.
Yeah.
Which is what a lot of these songs are too. Jules and Jim, written about a couple of journalists that wrote a book called The Boy Looked at Johnny, which is about Johnny Rotten and the punks.
Yeah, Tony Parsons and Julie Burchill.
It's basically just like an angry tirade against these two journalists.
Always going to be hard to pull that off.
Yeah, but I think it actually works.
A lot of it does, not all of it for me. The line, typewriter bangers on, you're all just hangers on. I love that.
Yes.
That's so clever. But then the other variation on that line doesn't work at all for me, which is typewriter tappers,
you're all just crappers.
Crappers. Wow.
Okay, yes, that wasn't one of his best. But you've got this real intense, angry lyrics and vocal performance. But then there's that interlude in the middle where it comes down a little bit and Pete sings in the falsetto.
Yeah, and again, we're getting to kind of Broadway material here. Little wine would bring us closer. He gets up there.
Because you're right, hypocrisy will be the death of me.
I love that.
Love that
great.
So much.
There's different sections to this song. Now, the main section is the weakest part of it. It's like, anyone could have an opinion. Anyone could join in. It's up. And then the next section, it really gets into that supercharged overdrive. I mean, it's verging on punk. I mean, it's got that intensity to it.
Yeah.
But then it takes that immediate swerve from that high energy punk section into that falsetto
angelic.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. So overall, the song works.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it's going to be really hard to pull off a lyric that's complaining about music critics. You just can't win.
Yeah. Keep on Working actually was a leftover from Who Are You? And there is a recording of that from that era with the band. Pete says that was his failed attempt to write like Ray Davies. Then Cats in the Cupboard, and just kind of a throwaway song.
Does nothing. Yeah, total throwaway.
Yeah. But the last two songs redeem side 2 for sure. A Little Is Enough, which is a song that's an ode to his estranged wife, who he'd been married to since 1969.
It's a beautiful love song. Yeah.
This is one of those songs that I think is too personal to be a Who song and for Roger to sing. Also has really cool synths. And then Empty Glass ends the album. The Who actually recorded this song during the Who Are You sessions with Pete on vocals. Not nearly as good with Kenny on drums as it is with Mark Berzecki. Anyway, that's kind of a rundown of the album. But I'm choosing this album for my album of the year and one of my albums of my lifetime. I think I bought this album when I was like 19 or 20.
About the same time I did.
I had already been a Who fan in high school, and Quadrophenia was probably my favorite album at that time too. So I was already really familiar with Pete's songwriting, and I had always seen the Who as Pete's vehicle, not Roger's. And I think that coming at it as a woman too, I latched on to the songwriting, I guess, more than the performances. I think one of the main reasons why guys were so much into them more than women was because of their stage presence and their live performances. They're a loud rock band. They have that stance, like Roger is the macho guy up there, and women think that he's really hot.
They didn't write songs about male-female relationships or love songs. I mean,
that's true. Yeah.
Very little there that, and again, we're talking stereotypes here, but very little there that your stereotypical woman would really latch onto or that would speak to.
If the songs are taken out of context of the albums, yes. And I agree that they were not love songs. They're actually more similar in that way to like prog bands, which is also a genre that has very few women followers. So many of the Who's albums, like I said, are character based. They're not about love. They're not about, relationships.
Not only not love songs, but not even like the typical macho.
The macho guys chasing the women kind of thing.
Right. Yeah. None of that. Yeah, none of that.
Yeah.
Even though they had a strong R&B and blues backing. They didn't draw lyrically on any of those well-trodden themes.
No, I think there's more in common with them in some ways with like prog lyrics or like Rush or
Yeah.
bands like that, which also do not have a female following because it's more story based or it's more personal.
There's some slight prog elements to this album too, musically.
The synths, maybe?
Well, some of the figures and the changes.
Yeah, and there's some complicated stuff on there. It is
Yeah.
more challenging, but it's packaged more in a pop rock vein.
Mhm.
But yeah, you're right. And that's also something too that is different about this album versus a Who album. So going back to that theory about this being a better Who album, I fully disagree with that.
That doesn't stop me from just wanting to hear what it would have sounded like if it were recorded with Roger Daltrey singing some of the songs, John Entwistle playing bass. Obviously, we could never hear Keith Moon on it. Too late for that, but it's just something curious to contemplate. Now, nothing prog about this next band, REO Speedwagon. So this is an interesting story. The REO Speedwagon had a massive, massive hit with the High Infidelity album, and then the first single, Keep On Loving You, which was a #1 song. High Infidelity, like I said, the single came out Thanksgiving week of 1980, sold crap loads of records throughout 1981.
Such a huge album. I mean, it was like everywhere.
The album of 1981, 4 singles in the top 40. All of them good, I think. But this is a band that have been kicking around for a long time. In fact, since the mid-'60s, they formed at college, came out of the Champaign-Urbana, Illinois area. That's where the campus of University of Illinois is, and a few of the members went to that university. The name REO Speedwagon comes from the keyboardist Neil Doty, who was an engineering major, and he took a class on history of transportation. And the name refers to an old pickup truck. If you're pronouncing it properly, it's actually REO Speedwagon. The vehicle was not REO Speedwagon, it was a REO Speedwagon, but the REO stood for Ransom Eli Olds, which is the name we got Oldsmobile from. But anyhow, they formed in the mid-'60s, didn't start recording. They got their record deal with Epic, turn of the 70s. First album comes out, 71, self-titled. And then the REO 2 album the next year. Different lead vocalist on those. So Kevin Cronin, who's the voice that people know of REO Speedwagon, didn't come in until album 2, and then he left the band after the second album. So he was in, then he was out for the next few records. They started building up a reputation primarily in the Midwest. It's a good live act. They toured their asses off. I mean, just toured, open for everybody. Became a big draw in the Midwest. They could fill arenas easily by the mid-'70s in the Midwest. But I think Kevin Cronin's quote is like, we could fill Busch Stadium, but we probably couldn't fill the Whiskey if we played in L.A.
Yeah.
Now, if you know, the Whiskey A Go-Go is a small club on Sunset Strip. Busch Stadium, where the Cardinals play, seats 50, 60,000. So they were big in the Midwest, but on the coasts, nobody wanted to know. So Kevin Cronin comes in for the second record. And actually, if you read old, like Sheryl and I did as youngsters, the rock criticism of the day, the REO 2 album gets higher notice than the other albums around it. I've never listened. You listened to it, didn't you, recently? Didn't you listen to some of the old REO stuff?
I did, yeah.
Recently?
It was all kind of like, it's okay. The only song
Competent, I think would be the one.
Yeah. The only song from that era, and I remember hearing the radio, was Riding the Storm Out.
Right, and that was one of the other. So, a guy named Luttrell was on the first album. He leaves after the one record and actually went on to front a band called Starcastle.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I did read that. Yeah.
Which you would know that. I don't.
Yeah.
I'm not familiar with them. Miss Prague here is.
They're they're like a Yes clone, really, is kind of what people say. But I really like them. They have one really, really good album from the early 70s.
It's funny. It's one of those bands that's been on my radar since I was a kid, because when I first started to realize, okay, Prague is something I like, so I need to learn about it. And I remember reading that they were a prog band. So I made a mental note of that. Must check out Starcastle sometime. Well, we're 40 years later and I still haven't. So anyway, Cronin, just the one record, he's out. And then Riding the Storm Out, I think that album came out in 73, I want to say. And that's really the first song of theirs that stuck on, album-oriented rock radio playlists outside of their home turf. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, that's something you would hear.
Yeah, I remember hearing it on the radio.
Yeah, Yeah, when I was, a teenager, young 20s, hearing on KSW and
Hmm.
classic rock stations and the like. So Riding the Storm Out makes some radio headway, nothing close to a hit, but it makes FM rock radio playlists. They're just constantly turning over personnel. Kevin Cronin comes back into the fold in the mid-70s. They're making gradual progress with sales. I mean, these are the stories that just don't happen anymore in the music business. You don't get this kind of leeway from your record company. If you're not a hit out of the gate, you're
Yeah.
moving on.
You don't.
So they're putting out records just about every year, touring their asses off. Cronin's back in the band. They're realizing we're a really good band on stage. And if you look them up on YouTube, they're a kick-ass live band. They really were good. So let's do a live album. We're not creating that same magic in the studios. The live album kind of kicks them up another notch sales-wise. They start to get a little more traction. Definitely in their element. Then more progress is made. 1978, they put out a record called You Can Tune a Piano, but You Can't Tune a Fish.
One of the worst album titles. And covers,
you know
by the way.
I'm sorry. I think it's funny, and I like the album cover.
Oh, God.
So You Can't Tune a Fish. It's spelled Tuna fish. And then the album cover, if you've never seen it, it's like a light blue background. There's a fish that's standing upright, and it's got a tuning fork sticking out of its mouth. It's an obvious pun. I still think it's funny. But you can see they definitely took a step forward here. The first two tracks on that record are both very radio-friendly and still on classic rock playlists today. Roll with the Changes, the lead track, and Time for Me to Fly. I think both were released as singles. They still don't crack the top 40. But again, there's two more songs that are getting some pretty good rotation on rock radio stations.
Both songs that really showcase Kevin Cronin's vocals, too.
Right. Kevin Cronin, I would put him in that column, Voices of Distinction.
Mm-hmm.
You really his voice is very recognizable. I wouldn't go so far to say he's got a great voice, but he does well with what he has, and he's got a distinctive style, which is more than half the battle if you're trying to sell records. So Epic Records has got to be thinking, oh, God, finally, this group is getting somewhere. They've been working their tails off for years, and they're becoming known as a FM rock band, that AOR format, but they haven't had that big smash hit that crosses over to AM radio yet. And then their next record, So You Can't Tune a Piano, comes out in 78. Their next record is 9 Lives, comes out in 79. Now, one of the interesting things about this band is the dynamic between the two main guys, which are Kevin Cronin, who is the lead vocalist, plays guitar and keyboards, and then the lead guitarist, whose name is Gary Richrath. Really good guitarist.
Yeah.
Probably underappreciated. He's not with us now. A little too much rock and roll lifestyle caught up to him eventually. So there's this kind of push and pull with those guys. And I think part of the reason Cronin left the band initially was they butted heads right away. Cronin comes back in. Now, Richrath is the rocker. He's the flamboyant, lead player. Cronin is the more folky, poppy ballad guy. So there's this dynamic there, this push and pull between those two, and a bit of a power struggle when it comes to recording albums and putting songs in the albums. So Cronin, those two songs that lead off You Can't Tune a Piano, those are both Cronin songs. Very radio friendly. Catchy. Melodies you can sink your teeth into. Choruses you remember, you can sing along to. Richrath, the power kind of swings more his way with the next record, and they backtrack. It doesn't build on the success or the steps they made with You Can't Tune a Piano. It's called 9 Lives. So it's swinging more to the harder rockin' side. But when you get to the end of that record, I think the last 3 songs really kind of signpost what's to come. You really get a feel for where they're headed, which is more radio-friendly, more pop-friendly sound with their next record, High Infidelity. And this thing just becomes a mega smash. So you got this band that's been slogging it out for years, and then all of a sudden they go from the second rung of the ladder, or the third or fourth rung of the ladder to the top.
Yeah.
The very top. This record was 10 times platinum, sold over 10 million in the United States alone. 6 singles, 4 in the top 40. The first single is Keep On Loving You. Is it my favorite song on the record? I don't think so, but it's the song that was released in 1980, so it's going on our 1980 show.
Yeah.
There will be more to come, I can promise you. So Keep On Loving You, at that time, the power ballad, you didn't hear people talk about power ballads.
Yeah.
I don't think that term really came around until later. But if you're making a Mount Rushmore of power ballads, this is absolutely on there. What was the first power ballad? Well, you can make a case that Stairway to Heaven is a power ballad. You can make a case that Dream On was really by Aerosmith was. A lot of people point to Love Hurts, the Nazareth version, which came out
version
in
of the
1975. Now that's starting to sound more like the classic template, which would be exploited to the hilt in the 80s.
Because it has to have the aching vocals and the screaming guitar solo.
What makes Keep on Loving You a little different from, we'll call the other ones proto power ballads. So like Led Zeppelin, Aerosmith, proto power. So with Keep on Loving You, you've got, kind of the soft ballady melody, but you've got the rock guitar from the beginning is there. It's part of the mix from the start.
Yeah.
Rather than building up to like a big solo. Or with, Stairway to Heaven, it's a long, slow build up to a rocking finish. So that really isn't the classic template for a power ballad.
Mm-mm.
So this is just, it's a slower, a ballad format song with strong amplified rock guitar as part of the mix throughout.
But it's more piano based, though.
It is, yeah. It's a keyboard based song, and I always thought Kevin Cronin was just the keyboardist of the band. He's more of a guitar player, but I think a lot of people perceived him as a keyboard player because that song becomes a hit.
Yeah.
This is the first time a lot of people are even aware of this band, unless you're like a hard rock person or someone who listens to AOR radio. You're probably not even aware of these guys because they never had anything close to a hit single. They never even had a top 40 until Keep on Loving You came out. And then when you're seeing them on shows performing or when the video starts getting played, MTV is still a ways off yet.
This is an early MTV video, but it's a live performance. So it's not really a video.
He's wearing that pink
He has some fashion choices that are very questionable.
He's kind of an androgynous looking fellow.
He really is. Yeah. And actually, I thought it was funny because Don't Let Him Go, the first song on this album, is written from a female standpoint. He sings in a very high register, he does seem androgynous. But the album covers, women are like hanging on them, like scantily clad women, and like even at High Infidelity, they're very sexualized in that way. A lot of the most, except for the Tuna one, but the other album covers are.
Well, I don't know.
Who knows what that's supposed to mean, but
yeah, they're taking the album title quite literally with the album art. Where you've got obviously a case of some marital infidelity taking place while somebody's changing a record on the hi-fi.
Yeah,
clever. So
they were going a little more subtle than the tuna fish in this one.
That's right. So all the elements of the classic power ballad are there. Then it's just about the execution, which is beautiful. The album starts with that piano and that chime. The guitar is there. The production, not just on this record, but the album as a whole, is huge. I mean, it's a huge sounding record. So it's
like it's made for arenas.
Reverb to the hilt on this record, just reverb to the max on everything. Kevin Cronin's vocals, he doubles all his vocals, and then they're heavy, slattered with reverb. The drums are huge. The guitar is everything's huge.
Yeah.
It's just the sound of this thing is just cavernous. And with the reverb, particularly the first track, Don't Let Him Go, which is a banger. It's a good song.
It's got the Bo Diddley beat. Yeah.
It sounds almost live. I mean, it sounds like reverberating throughout a concert hall. So huge sound. And in particular, the song that we're going to have on our 1981 playlist, that's massive sounding too, Take It on the Run.
Yeah.
Side one of the album is packed with the hits. So it's starts with Don't Let Him Go, then Keep on Loving You comes in, and I love that sequencing. So you start with the up-tempo, Bo Diddley rocker, and then slip into that power ballad, and the likes of which we hadn't heard before. I mean, this was really a new standard as far as what is essentially a soft rock song, a piano-based ballad with heavy rock guitar throughout, and then the solo is beautiful. And Gary Richrath,
the solo, yeah.
Gary Richrath excels on solos. I mean, I put him in the David Gilmour category as far as just note perfect contributions to these songs. Beautiful tone.
Yeah.
He plays a 59 Les Paul. nothing fancy. I think with it, it's just
So warm.
he's got a great guitar tone. He plays a classic guitar. It's just a Les Paul through a 50-watt Marshall. And I read, Kevin Beamish is the engineer who gets a lot of credit for their success. And he went on to produce a bunch of other kind of lesser hard rock bands, stuff like Y&T and Saxon. But then he switched to country, and he's very successful in Nashville, mixing big country hits. But he says Rich Rath he had this tone in his head that they were trying to nail it. And he said they went away from a 100-watt amp and switched to a 50-watt Marshall, and they put it up on a folding chair. And then it was just about getting the angle and the placement of the mic perfect. And they got that great tone. But the thing that stands out about the production over everything else is reverb. I mean, it's just massive amounts of it on the radio, but it worked.
It works.
It jumped out of the radio. This song just leapt out of the radio when you heard it the first time. And that's going to be a common theme here, for me at least, when picking rock songs from the early 80s, like the Loverboy record. We talked, that comes out in 81.
Yeah.
Those first Loverboy singles just jumped out of the radio. But this one did the trick. And then, side one, but for one kind of weeks, Follow Your Heart, it's okay. But the other 4 songs at side one, all singles, all top 40 hits, all good ones. You had In Your Letter, which was kind of a throwback.
Yeah, I actually always thought that was a cover song because it sounds so 60s, like early 60s.
It sounds like a cover of like an old girl group song from the early 60s. And then the final song on side one,
Take It on the Run.
Take It on the Run. Which we'll save that for later because that's probably the best song on the record, and Sheryl and I both love that, so that'll make our 1981 list. So the song I really want to talk about, other than Keep On Loving You on the record, is the first song on side 2, which was not a single, but it's a great record.
It should have been, yeah.
It should have been a single. There's profanity on it, but you can easily edit that. I get maybe they felt like it's a key line in the song. I can understand where they wouldn't feel comfortable releasing an edited version of the song. It's a clever rhyme, and the song is cute. It's basically a song for wimpy guys. The song's called Tough Guys, and it's basically about a woman who's not interested in tough guys, so don't come on all tough in front of her because she's going to shoot you down. It's not a complicated theme, but it's a clever lyric. It's a great little power pop song. I love the guitar riff, that kind of pinched harmonic riff from Gary Richrath, and it's a cute lyric from Kevin Cronin. I think it would have been a big hit if they released that as a single.
Yeah, but it's not the arena rock sound, though. I'm actually surprised that In Your Letter was a single. That's so beboppy poppy.
But that was kind of happening.
The throwback was popular.
Yeah, the nostalgic sound was really popular, so it kind of fit with the times.
Yeah.
So it's funny, this record is just a huge, huge hit when the one before it kind of stiffed, and the record they released after this was not a hit either.
They did have one song that was big after that, but I think it was later.
It was the album after Good Trouble.
Can't Fight This Feeling.
Can't Fight. That was the number one. Keep the Fire Burning. That was a hit off Good Trouble, but the record wasn't nearly the success that High Infidelity was. So, I mean, the record company had to be a little frustrated with this band because they'd worked so hard. They'd been so patient with these guys, and then the big breakthrough, but it's kind of up and down thing with
I think that
REO.
Keep On Loving You, I love the beginning and the first verse and just the way that he sings it. It's so sing-alongable.
Structure of the song is a little different too, because it's not verse, chorus, bridge. It's 2 verses, then the chorus, and then that's it.
And then it just keeps going on and Keep On Loving You for the rest of the song, on and on.
Well, obviously, it's a winning chorus. It's a grand slam home run of a chorus. So you've got the 2 verses, then the chorus, and then the guitar solo, beautiful guitar solo, and then it leads back. There is a pre-chorus section too. The verses are interesting too. So this is basically, it's a song about a guy, and it's based on actual events. I think his wife had cheated on him. I think before they were married. They were together as a couple, but she had cheated on him, and he didn't discover it until after they were married. So I knew all about those men. Still, I don't remember, because it was us, baby, way before them. and we're still together. So it's, it's kind of uplifting. This is the second verse. The first verse is a little more unforgiving. And I didn't really catch on to these lyrics until fairly recently, but it cuts. So it goes, it's actually more the pre-chorus part. You played dead, but you never bled. Instead, you laid still in the grass, all coiled up and hissing. Ooh, that's pretty tough. Yeah, that's pretty tough. And then it goes, I know you cheated on me, but we were together before then. Our bond is strong enough. We can overcome that. I'm going to keep on loving you.
Because I meant every word I said when I said that I love you. I meant that I love you forever. Like everybody is going to sing that. Everyone.
Right. And I'm going to keep lighters.
On. Yeah.
I don't know when the
light in the air.
I don't know when that started, but it could have started.
Been here. Yeah.
But this record really kind of paves the way for the records that were going to be big hits down the road, particularly the next year with Journey's Escape. I mean, lyrically and musically, kind of following a template that REO is laying down.
And they were similar in other ways too, where they had been slogging along for a long time, and been, really just hadn't quite had that breakthrough. And I think REO actually had better albums before this one than Journey did in their early days. But it was sort of a similar story in that way. When you first said you were going to choose this song, I was like, oh, because I really like Taking on the Run so much better. But I was listening to this and watching live performances of it, and in some ways, I actually think it's a better song than Taking on the Run.
Taking on the Run actually has a lot of haters, I'm finding, which is surprising to me.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
God, I've always loved that song.
Me too. But I think that the thing about Taking on the Run is that first, those first few lines, and that's what makes it so great. Yeah. But after that, it kind of just becomes a little bit uninteresting. This song actually, even though they continue to just sing the chorus over again, I think it's actually a better song.
The solo has a little more subtlety than the one in Taking on the Run. The solo is beautiful.
It is. And if you watch them perform it live, he does it perfect every time. And it really
good
is.
Guitarist.
Yeah. But it still has enough edge to it too.
All the elements are there for a great record. You got the sing-along chorus, great use of harmonies.
Mm-hmm.
The cavernous production all throughout the album. You've got the synth sweeteners in there. The keyboards are layered in there. It's a pretty busy mix. I wouldn't call this an audiophile album. Things get a little crowded in the mix, but it's about this huge sound.
Mm-hmm.
The tone setters right at the bat with Don't Let Him Go. I mean, just this big arena ready sound. And you could see why they were a popular live draw. And a lot of their songs you could see would really work well in a concert context.
Mm-hmm.
This was all over the radio in late 1980 and 1981. And hard to believe, the only REO I have ever had in my record collection in my life is the 45 of Taking on the Run.
Well, and that's why I was wondering if you ever owned the album in 1980, because I never did.
No.
I felt like it was one of those albums that, like, I had so many friends that had it that you were going to hear it at somebody's house, but I just never owned it myself.
And I remember hearing all four of those top 40 singles on the radio at the time.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
But never owned the album. But, having listened to the album a few times now, side two, it kind of, after Tough Guys, there's nothing that particularly stands out after that. There's nothing bad on it. It's an enjoyable listen throughout. I think it's certainly worthy of, having the album in the collection. If for nothing else than to have Tough Guys, that should be in your collection. If that's not
on a greatest hits collection, then it would be worth having the album for that song. Yeah.
So add Keep On Loving You to the playlist. Sheryl is maintaining our playlist on Spotify. You could find that.
Yep.
And Sheryl's album of the year, Empty Glass, the first true solo record for the lead songwriter and guitarist from The Who, Pete Townshend. Well, we have a lot more of 1980 to explore on episodes to come. Just a little teaser on what's upcoming. We've already told you there's going to be 2 songs off High Infidelity, one for 1980, one for 1981. Another record that came out at the end of 1980, I think same deal. We're going to have 2 songs at least off of that record. And that was the second best-selling album of 1981, which was John Lennon and Yoko Ono's Double Fantasy.
Yeah.
So we're going to have a song from that coming down the line. We're going to talk about 1980s movies. And also, my album of the year, 1980. It's going to be part of a special episode where we'll look at the year in the life of one of the great producers of not just the 1980s, but the history of rock music, who had one hell of a year in 1980. He produced 5 records. 4 of them are incredible. One of them is somewhat unknown. That's some of the stuff we got coming up. So that'll do it for this episode of Matt and Cheryl's Gen Excellent Playlist. I'm Matt.
I'm Sheryl.
Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Take care.